The Galactic Council had deemed Sector 7 Kappa uninhabitable. The valley world of Threshin possessed an atmosphere too dense, gravity too crushing, and fauna too aggressive for colonization. But Elena Maris had never been one to follow the Council's recommendations. She had arrived on Threshin 3 standard years ago, a xenobiologist with more curiosity than caution. The Council's report spoke of apex predators, the Kreshva, as monsters, six-limbed carnivores with obsidian scales, razor claws, and intelligence that bordered on sentience. They stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, their serpentine necks supporting heads filled with teeth designed to tear through reinforced hull plating. Most species gave Threshin a wide berth. Elena saw something else. She saw mothers protecting their young. She saw pack structures that rivaled any Earthvolf. She saw potential. The valley she chose became her life's work. A crystalline river cut through emerald forests where trees grew thick as shuttlecraft. She built her research station at the valley's heart, a modest structure that could withstand Threshin-esque violent storms. The Kreshva observed her with amber eyes that glowed in the darkness. They kept their distance. She kept hers. Months became years. Elena learned their hunting patterns, their mating calls, their territorial boundaries. She documented everything, with the meticulous care of someone who knew she was observing something precious. The Council wanted data on how to exterminate them. Elena sent back reports on how to preserve them. Then came the Vorten Mining Consortium. They arrived without warning. 6 massive extraction vessels that descended on Threshin like locusts. The valley's soil contained viridium deposits worth trillions of credits. The Vortens had purchased mining rights from the Council, paperwork properly filed, profits properly projected. That Elena's research station sat in the middle of their primary excavation site was, to them, an inconvenience easily remedied. Elena refused to evacuate. She stood before their lead enforcer, a hulking Vorten named Greltok, and told him the valley was a breeding ground. Destroying it would doom the entire Kreshva population. Greltok informed her that Kreshva were classified as non-sentient predators. Their extinction was legally permissible. She had 48 hours to leave. Elena didn't leave. Instead, she did something the Council would later call insane. She walked into Kreshva territory carrying nothing but a translator device and a silver locket, the only thing she had left of her mother. She found the pack she'd observed longest, the one with 4 cubs still learning to hunt. The alpha female, massive and scarred from decades of survival, could have killed Elena with a single swipe. Instead, she listened. Elena didn't know if the Kreshva understood every word, but they understood intent. They understood desperation. They understood that this small, fragile human was trying to protect them. When the Vorten mining crews began their excavation, they encountered resistance they hadn't anticipated. The Kreshva attacked and coordinated strikes, taking out drilling equipment and supply lines. But the Vortens had weapons designed for clearing hostile fauna, plasma rifles that could boil flesh from bone, sonic cannons that liquefied internal organs. The Kreshva were dying. Elena made her choice on the 3rd day. She activated the valley's ancient geological fault line, something she'd discovered in her surveys but never reported. The detonation would destabilize the entire mining operation, render the viridium deposits inaccessible for centuries. It would also destroy her research station and everything she'd built. She set the charges and waited at the valley's northern ridge, the only escape route for the Kreshva. When they came, driven by instinct and the rumbling earth beneath them, she stood in the path of the Vorten enforcer squad sent to stop them. Greltok demanded she move. Elena raised her weapon, an old earth rifle, practically an antique. She told him the Kreshva would pass. He told her she would die. She replied that some things were worth dying for. The firefight lasted 17 seconds. Elena's shots disabled 2 Vorten combat suits before Greltok's plasma bolt caught her in the chest. She fell among the rocks, the silver locket tumbling from her neck. Behind her, the Kreshva pack fled through the passage, the 4 cubs stumbling on still awkward legs. Ravin, the eldest of the cubs, stopped. His mother snarled at him to run, but Ravin approached the dying human. Elena's vision was fading, but she felt warm breath on her face. felt something rough tongue gently touch her hand. Then small jaws, surprisingly careful, lifted the locket from where it had fallen. The detonation came moments after the last Kreshva cleared the valley. The entire mining operation collapsed into a newly formed chasm. 17 Vorton personnel died. The council launched an investigation that went nowhere officially. It was a tragic geological accident. Elena Maris was listed as a casualty. Her body never recovered. But in the new valley the Kreshva claimed, stories began to spread among the few xenobiologists brave enough to venture to Threshin. Stories of a pack unlike any other. Of a young male who wore a silver locket around his neck, the chain somehow integrated into his scales. Of Kreshva who didn't attack human researchers on sight, who seemed to recognize the species of the one who had saved them. 20 years later, Raven stood as alpha of his pack, the locket still gleaming against his obsidian scales. The valley his pack guarded was lush and protected, designated a conservation zone after mounting pressure from xenobiologist communities across the galaxy. No mining, no colonization. No exploitation. When human researchers visited, Raven would approach, something no wild Kreshva had ever done. He would lower his massive head, letting them see the locket, letting them understand that humans were different. That one human had stood between his kind and annihilation, that Elena Maris had died so that cubs like him could live. In the twilight hours, when Threshin's twin moons rose over the valley, Raven would stand on the northern ridge where she had fallen. The pack would gather behind him, adults and cubs alike. And in their way, with vocalizations that sounded almost like mourning, they would remember the human who taught them that courage wasn't about size or strength. That family extended beyond species. That some bonds, forged in sacrifice, could never be broken. The council had been wrong about Threshin. They'd been wrong about the Kreshva, but they'd been most wrong about Elena Maris. She wasn't just a xenobiologist who ignored regulations. She was the mother of a new alliance, the guardian of a species. The human who proved that one person, standing in the right place at the right time, could change the future of an entire world. And in the valley she preserved, her legacy lived. On not in data files or research papers, but in the amber eyes of creatures who would never forget. And in a silver locket that caught the starlight, worn by a predator who had learned what it meant to protect.